Yeah, so not only did Irish American immigrants fund terrorism, such as the Fenian Dynamite campaign in Britain, but they are also responsible for the creation of the world's first practical submarine. This is John Philip Holland. He arrives in the United States from Ireland in 1873 with designs for a practical submarine that are inspired by events of the U.S. Civil War, as well as Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. However, the U.S. Navy isn't interested in Holland's designs, but who is? The Fenian Brotherhood. They want him to build a weapon to fight the British with, so they give him $200,000 to develop a submarine prototype. During this time, the issue with submarines is power. It's really difficult to figure out how to create a power system that works for a machine that is operating underwater. Mainly, how do you get air in and out of the system? The French developed a ship called the Plongeur, which was steam powered. However, it ran into a lot of operational difficulties. However, Holland was able to make a practical submarine called the Fenian Ram that used a Brayton piston engine that was powered by kerosene. Holland starts extensively testing out the Fenian Ram from 1881 to 1883. It has a maximum depth of about 53 feet and has a maximum speed of about 9 knots, or 16 miles per hour. However, in 1883, there's a funding dispute between him and the Fenian Brotherhood, and in response to this, they steal his submarine as well as another prototype. However, the Fenians don't know how to operate it. And so they ask him again, hey, can you teach us how to use this? And he refuses. And so ultimately, the project is abandoned. In 1916, the Fenian Ram would be put on display at Madison Square Garden to raise donations for victims of the Easter Rising in Ireland. And then in the 1920s, it would be sold for scrap before being saved by Irish American activist Harry Cunningham, who would later put it on display in a museum in Paterson, New Jersey, where it still remains to this day. As for Holland, well, his work with the Fenian Brotherhood would be noticed by the U.S. Navy, and he would later be commissioned by them to make the U.S. Navy's first commissioned submarine, the USS Holland, in 1900. Holland would solve the issue of power in submarines by having a kerosene-based internal combustion engine for operation along the surface. Then when the submarine submerges, you would switch to battery-powered electric motors. And then when the submarine goes back to the surface, that kerosene engine could recharge those batteries, kind of like a hybrid. And that method would remain in place for decades afterwards until eventually the development of nuclear-powered submarines. Holland's designs would be incorporated into the U.S. Navy, the Royal Navy of the UK, as well as the Japanese Navy. But remember that it all started because he received funding from Irish nationalists who wanted a weapon to fight against the British with.